Stacey Holston's life was tragically cut short in a shocking act committed by someone she had known her entire life. On the evening of October 11, 2017, Todd Holston, Stacey's husband, was at his construction job in Maysville, Kentucky. When he realized he hadn't heard from his wife all day, he called and texted her throughout the morning and afternoon hours. Still yet he couldn't get hold of her. By evening, desperate for answers, he called Stacey's mother, Tammy, and asked her to drive down to check on Stacey and the kids. Tammy agreed without hesitation. Todd stayed on the line as she made her way over. She tried the doors, but they were locked. She eventually forced her way through the locked door into the house, and while still on the phone with Todd, she screamed, followed by a loud noise. Then the line went completely silent. Todd, confused and worried, called Tammy's husband Donald and told him everything that had happened and what he had heard on the phone. Donald immediately went to check. Hours passed and Donald went silent too. Without hesitation, Todd drove home from Kentucky, clinging to the desperate hope that he could still fix whatever was wrong. But when he walked through his own front door, a man attacked him with a knife. And this man was the least person anyone would have thought. In this video, I will lay out all the disturbing details of this case. But what exactly happened to Stacey Holston, and who was actually responsible for her murder, and the murders of 3 members of her family? This is the story of Stacey Holston. Stacey Holston, born December 21, 1991, was 25 years old at the time of her death. She lived with her husband Todd and their 2 sons, 8-year-old Devin, who everyone called DH, and 2-year-old BH, in a modest home along State Route 93 in Pedro, Ohio. Pedro is a small, unincorporated community tucked deep within Lawrence County. The kind of place where neighbors know each other by name, where families live within walking distance of one another for generations, and where the dense hardwood forests of the Wayne National Forest press right up against the back of your property line. Stacey's life was built around consistency and routine. She was, by every account, the kind of person who held the household together with small, deliberate acts of care. One of those acts was something she did every single morning without fail. When Todd left before sunrise to drive to his construction worksite in Maysville, Kentucky, Stacey would wait until he arrived, and then she would send him a text message. Just a simple check-in. Just a way of saying, "I'm here, and I know you made it." She did not make grand gestures. She made consistent ones. And it was precisely that consistency, that deeply ordinary habit, that would become the first signal to the people who loved her that something on October 11, 2017, had gone terribly wrong. It all began on October 10, 2017, which was a completely ordinary Tuesday in Pedro, Ohio. At around 7:15 in the evening, Todd came home from work. When he arrived, he found that a visitor was still there. Arron Lawson, Stacey's first cousin, who lived nearby and had a habit of dropping by the Holston home on a near daily basis. That part was not unusual. Lawson was a familiar presence in that house. What Todd noticed, however, was the way Lawson reacted when Stacey asked Todd to drive him home. According to Todd's later testimony, Lawson was not happy about it. He did not make a scene, but the displeasure was visible. Todd drove him home anyway, and the evening settled back into its normal rhythm. The children were put to bed. The house went quiet. And as far as Todd and Stacey knew, tomorrow would be just another Wednesday. Todd left for work the following morning at approximately 4:30 a.m. The sky was still dark. The forest along State Route 93 was silent. He made the drive to Maysville, Kentucky, clocked in, at his work site at 6:43 a.m. And then he waited. He waited for the text message that Stacey always sent. The one that told him she knew he had made it safely. The one she had sent every single morning without exception. That morning, it never came. Todd told himself not to worry at first. Maybe she was busy with the boys. Maybe Devin had been difficult getting ready for school. He sent her a text. No response. He tried calling. Nothing. As the morning stretched into afternoon, the silence on the other end of that phone line shifted from mildly concerning to deeply unsettling. He kept trying. Every hour, every break he got from the worksite, he was reaching for his phone and dialing her number. And every single time, nothing. Meanwhile, back at the Holston home, the morning had moved forward on its usual schedule. Devin had gotten ready for school. Stacey had written a note for the school office that day. A routine logistical arrangement, instructing staff to put Devin on a different bus that afternoon, to take him to his grandparents' house rather than home. Devin took the note, climbed onto his school bus, and rode off down the winding road through the forest. A completely normal Wednesday morning for an 8-year-old boy. By the time the afternoon arrived and Todd still had not been able to reach his wife, he made a decision. He called Stacey's mother, Tammy McGuire, who lived approximately a quarter of a mile down the road. He asked her if she could drive over to the house and check on Stacey. Tammy agreed immediately. She got in her truck and drove the short distance to her daughter's home. When she arrived, she found the doors locked. She called Todd back and told him. Todd told her to break in if she had to. So she did. She forced her way inside, and the phone connection between her and Todd remained open the entire time. For a few moments, there was nothing, just the sound of Tammy moving through the house. And then, Todd heard his mother-in-law scream, followed by a loud noise. And then, the line went completely silent. Todd Holston, standing at a worksite in Kentucky, held his phone and heard nothing. He had no idea what had just happened inside that house. He could not reach Tammy back. The line was simply dead. So he did the only thing he could think to do. He called Tammy's husband, Donald McGuire, and told him what had happened. He told Donald that Tammy had gone to check on Stacey, that she had broken into the house, that he had heard her scream, and that the line had gone quiet. Donald did not hesitate. He told Todd he would go and check, and he left on foot, walking the short distance from his own home toward the Holston residence. Donald tried the back door first when he arrived. It was locked, so he walked around to the front door, and finding that locked as well, he forced his way through it. And then Donald McGuire wasn't reachable anymore. Todd Holston was now driving home from Kentucky as fast as the roads would allow, unable to reach his wife, unable to reach his mother-in-law, and now unable to reach his father-in-law either. When he finally pulled up to his own home and came through the front door, a man came at him with a knife. He was stabbed multiple times, in the head, the neck, and the torso. Todd, despite his wounds, managed to wrestle the knife away from his attacker and pin him to the couch. In the chaos of that moment, according to Todd's later testimony, the man told him that there have been people breaking in out here, and I thought you were one of them. Todd also testified. The man shook, like he snapped out of something. Todd asked where Stacey and the children were. The man told him they were in the bedroom, that they were okay. Todd forced the man out of his house. He got into Tammy's truck, the one she had driven to the house earlier that evening, and drove away. Todd went to check on his youngest son, the H, who was unharmed. He then moved through the house, and what he found in those rooms sent him running. He gathered BH, drove to Tammy's brother's house a quarter-mile away, borrowed a phone, and called 911 for people were dead inside that house. And the man who had just driven away in Tammy McGuire's truck was someone Todd Holston had known his entire life. When Lawrence County Sheriff's deputies arrived at Todd Holston's apartment on the evening of October 11, 2017, following his 911 call, what investigators found inside the home was immediate, overwhelming, and unmistakable. 3 adults were dead. But as investigators moved through the residence in those first critical hours, conducting their initial sweep of the property, something was wrong with the count. 8-year-old Devin Holston was not among the victims recovered in that first pass through the home, and that absence changed everything about the next 18 hours. The working possibility, in those first frantic moments, was that Devin had somehow escaped. That he had fled through a window or a door during the violence and was somewhere out in the surrounding Wayne National Forest, alone and frightened, but alive. That single hope triggered an immediate and massive response. Sheriff Jeffrey Lawless mobilized more than 100 officers from local, regional, state, and federal agencies. K-9 units worked scent lines outward from the residence. Helicopters swept the dense hardwood canopy from above as darkness fell across Lawrence County. The terrain was brutal. Steep ridges, narrow creek valleys, and thick ground cover from the mid-October leaf fall, making every step of the search slow and uncertain. But the forest gave nothing back. By Thursday afternoon, October 12, investigators from the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, known as BCI, had been called in to conduct a second, far more methodical sweep of the residence itself. Slower, more deliberate, and it was during that second examination of the home that they found him. Devin's body had not been outside at all. He had been inside the house the entire time, concealed deliberately, his small body covered with clothing, unhidden in a place the initial sweep had missed. Sheriff Lawless later confirmed to reporters that the boy had been put in a place that was hidden. At that moment, at approximately 1 p.m. on Thursday, October 12, the last remaining uncertainty dissolved. This was not a partial crime scene, for people were dead inside that house. A 25-year-old mother, her 8-year-old son, her 43-year-old mother, and her mother's 50-year-old husband, all were killed within the walls of a home that should have been the safest place any of them had ever been. Now, the forensic work that followed was conducted by investigators from BC, alongside the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, and what they documented inside the residence told a story that went far beyond a single act of violence, starting with the rear bedroom window, which had been propped partially open using a book wedged between the window and the sill. That window, and the book holding it open, was not an accident or an oversight. It was a prepared entry point. Someone had opened that window deliberately, on a prior visit, and left it that way. Inside the residence, investigators recovered a 20-gauge shotgun, left behind during the struggle with Todd Holston. They recovered a backpack containing flashlights, toilet paper, knives, a tarp, and what could only be described as survival gear. Items packed and brought to the scene deliberately, not grabbed in a moment of impulse. They recovered a discarded condom from the kitchen wastebasket, and they documented the positions of the bodies. Each one moved after death, each one covered with something. A blanket, clothing, a mattress from the futon in Devin's bedroom. The autopsies, conducted by Drive, Robert Shutt, the deputy Montgomery County coroner, told investigators exactly how each victim had died. Stacey Holston had been shot 3 times, 2 wounds to the chest and 1 to the back, with the damage fatal to her heart and lungs. Devin had been shot twice, once in the arm and once in the torso, the second shot destroying his heart, lung, and aorta. Tammy McGuire had been shot twice, once in the neck, which fatally injured her spinal cord, and once in the shoulder. Donald McGuire had been shot twice as well, once in the shoulder and once, fatally, in the chest. All for work killed with the same weapon. All for work killed inside the same house. All for moved after death and deliberately concealed. But here is where the forensic picture became something investigators could not ignore. The DNA recovered from the discarded condom in the kitchen wastebasket was matched to a specific individual. And the data extracted from Stacey Holston's cell phone confirmed that at 9:23 a.m. on October 11, a call had been placed from Stacey's number to Devin's school. A call made by someone who was not Stacey. Someone who had introduced themselves to the school's guidance secretary as Todd. Someone who had spoken calmly, confidently, and without any indication that anything was wrong. Someone who had used that call to cancel the arrangement Stacey had made that morning. The one that would have sent Devin to his grandparents' house that afternoon, and redirected the boy straight back home. That detail stopped investigators cold, because what it meant was this: whoever was inside that house had not just committed for murders in a blind rage. They had actively, deliberately, intervened to ensure that an 8-year-old child, who had safely left the house that morning, would come back. They had picked up a dead woman's phone, dialed a school, and calmly talked a guidance secretary into sending that boy home. This was not a crime of passion. This was not an escalating argument that ended in tragedy. This was a calculated, hours-long operation carried out inside a family home. And by the time investigators had pieced together the forensic evidence, the DNA, the cell phone records, the propped window, and the backpack full of supplies, they already had a name. They had known the name since the night of October 11, because Todd Holston had told them exactly who the man with the knife was. The man who had driven away in Tammy McGuire's truck. The man who had been in that house all day. His name was Arron Lawson. Arron Lawson was 23 years old at the time of the murders. He was Stacey Holston's first cousin. And by every account of the people who knew him, he was a constant unfamiliar presence in her life and in her home. He lived nearby. He visited daily. He was, on the surface, simply family. Someone who came around so often that his presence had become background noise to the routine of that household. But here is the thing. Beneath that familiar, unremarkable surface, something had been building in Arron Lawson for a long time. Lawson had told his own mother that Stacey was the love of his life. He described her that way without apparent awareness of how deeply abnormal that statement was, given that Stacey was his first cousin, a married woman, and the mother of 2 young children. In his mind, according to what investigators would later piece together from his confession and from the testimony of people who knew him, the relationship between himself and Stacey had taken on a significance that existed almost entirely inside his own head. He told investigators that the two of them had been engaged in a sexual affair, one that Stacey had ended approximately a week before October 11, around October 6, 2017. By his own account, she had broken it off, and Lawson had not accepted that. Now, from the moment Todd Holston gave law enforcement Lawson's name on the night of October 11, the investigation had a clear focal point. But Lawson was not in custody yet. He had driven away from the scene in Tammy McGuire's truck, and he was somewhere out in Lawrence County with a head start. Law enforcement put out an immediate alert, and in the early hours of Thursday morning, October 12, deputies spotted the truck in Ironton, approximately 15 miles south of Pedro. They pursued it. Lawson crashed the truck into a ditch and fled on foot. disappearing into the darkness and into the surrounding woods. And so began a two-day search that consumed the resources of more than 100 local, regional, state, and federal law enforcement officers. Lawson had abandoned the truck, but he had also left his backpack and shotgun behind at the Holston residence, which meant he was now in the woods without his primary survival supplies. He stopped at a store at some point during his flight, using cash he had stolen from the Holston home to buy new clothing, replacing the ones that were covered in blood. Then he went back into the woods and stayed there for nearly 48 hours. Lawson hid in the Wayne National Forest, the same dense, rugged terrain that had complicated every other aspect of this investigation now sheltered the man responsible for it. The temperatures dropped significantly overnight, and Lawson later described one particular night in the woods as cold. He would say afterward that after that night, he just didn't have no more fight in him. But even so, he did not emerge until the morning of Friday, October 13, when a citizen spotted him walking along the road and called the police. By that point, Lawson was exhausted, cold, and by all accounts, done running. He was apprehended without a struggle. Officers described him as worn out. He was taken directly to the Lawrence County Prosecutor's office in Arron, and that is where the interrogation began. What happened in that room over the course of the next several hours was not a prolonged psychological battle. Lawson did not lawyer up immediately. He did not construct an elaborate alternative narrative and force detectives to dismantle it piece by piece. Instead, relatively quickly, he moved toward a full confession. But the way the confession unfolded, and the details it contained, told investigators everything they needed to understand about who Arron Lawson wasn't what he had done. He began by telling investigators about the affair. He told them that he and Stacey had been involved, and that she had ended it around October 6. He framed what had happened on October 11, at least initially, in the language of emotional pain. A man who had loved someone and lost her. But detectives were not interested in the emotional framing. They were interested in the backpack. They were interested in the propped window. They were interested in the call to the school at 9:23 a.m. And as investigators laid those details in front of him, one by one, the story Lawson was trying to construct around himself began to collapse. The propped window was the detail that mattered most in terms of establishing what the law calls prior calculation and design, because that window had been propped open on October 10, the day before the murders. During Lawson's afternoon visit to the Holston home, he had not grabbed a weapon in a moment of rage and acted impulsively. He had gone into a back bedroom the day before, quietly, without anyone noticing, opened a window, and wedged a book into the sill to hold it open. He had gone home that evening, unhappy about being driven away by Todd, and he had come back the following morning before sunrise, through that window, with a shotgun and a bag full of supplies, and he had hidden in that back bedroom for hours. When investigators pressed him on that detail, Lawson confirmed it. He admitted that he had propped the window open on October 10 with the intention of coming back the next day to commit murder. He confessed to killing Stacey first. After she entered the back bedroom where he was hiding, he confessed to what he did to her body afterward. The detail recovered forensically from the discarded condom. He confessed to feeding 2-year-old BH during the hours he spent waiting in the house after Stacey's death, changing the boy's diaper and putting him down for a nap. He confessed to calling Devin's school from Stacey's phone, posing as Todd, to make sure Devin came home that afternoon. He confessed to what happened when Devin walked through the door. He confessed to shooting Tammy McGuire when she forced her way into the house. He confessed to moving her truck behind the house to conceal it. He confessed to shooting Donald McGuire when Arnold forced his way through the front door minutes later. And when detectives asked him about the attack on Todd, about why he had come at his own cousin's husband with a knife after spending an entire day killing members of that man's family, Lawson's answer was, "I don't know how. It was just a blind thing of anger." A blind thing of anger. From a man who had spent the previous 24 hours in a state of extraordinary, methodical, deliberate calculation. Detectives noted something else during those interviews. Something about the way Lawson spoke about the day. He was not visibly distressed. He was not falling apart. He answered questions. He provided details. He spoke about what he had done in the same measured, cooperative tone that Todd Holston had described when recounting how Lawson had sat in the living room with Devin after school, talking to him about his day, right up until the moment he sent the boy into his bedroom and shot him. That calm, that cooperation, that complete absence of visible internal conflict. It told investigators something important. Whatever had driven Arron and Lawson to that house on the morning of October 11, it had not been a sudden, uncontrollable break. It had been a decision, made the day before, in that back bedroom, when he pressed a book into a windowsill and left it there. To truly understand what happened inside the Holston's residence on October 11, 2017, you have to go back one day earlier, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Pedro, Ohio, October 10, 2017. Lawson arrived at the Holston home during the day, while Todd was still at work. Nothing about his visit appeared unusual. He had been coming to that house almost every single day. Stacey knew him. The children knew him. He was family. And so when he slipped away into the back bedroom at some point during that visit, quietly, without drawing attention, nobody thought anything of it. He opened the rear window. He took a book and pressed it between the window frame and the sill, holding the window slightly open, just enough. Then he walked back out, rejoined the household, and waited for the evening to play out. When Todd came home at 7:15 p.m. and drove Lawson back to his own house, Lawson left, but he was not done. He went home and he prepared. He loaded a 20-gauge shotgun with 8 shells, each one packed with slugs rather than buckshot, a deliberate choice for a weapon intended to kill at close range. He packed a backpack, flashlights, toilet paper, knives, a tarp, the kinds of items a person brings when they intend to stay somewhere for an extended period and clean up afterward. He set everything aside and he waited for Todd to leave in the morning. At approximately 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday, October 11, Todd Holston's headlights swept across the road as he pulled out of the driveway and headed toward Kentucky. Approximately 30 minutes later, Arron Lawson approached the back of the Holston residence. He found the window exactly as he had left it, still propped open by the book. He climbed through. He moved quietly through the darkened house and settled himself into the back bedroom to wait. For the next 4 hours, Lawson stayed hidden in that room while the household woke up around him. Stacey prepared Devin for school. She wrote the note for the school office about the bus change. She fed 2-year-old BH and went about her morning. At approximately 8 a.m., Devin boarded his school bus and the house grew quieter. By 8:30 a.m., BH had been settled, and Stacey entered the back bedroom. Lawson shot her 3 times, 2 rounds to the chest and 1 to the back. The damage to her heart and lungs was fatal. She fell to the floor of that room. What Lawson did next is documented in the forensic record and confirmed by his own confession. He dragged Stacey's body from the back bedroom to Devin's room, where he lifted her onto the futon bed. The DNA recovered from the condom discarded in the kitchen wastebasket confirmed what happened in that room. Afterward, Lawson returned to Devin's bedroom, covered Stacey's body with a blanket in the futon mattress, and moved on. He then went to check on BH, the 2-year-old, who was unharmed. Lawson fed him. He changed his diaper. He put him down for a nap in the main bedroom. And then he picked up Stacey's cell phone. At 9:23 a.m., he dialed Devon's school. The school's caller ID system showed Stacey's number, which matched the number already on file in the office. The guidance secretary who answered had no reason to question the call. The man on the other end identified himself as Todd. He spoke calmly and without hesitation. He explained that the grandfather was no longer able to watch Devon that afternoon, and that Devon should be sent home on his regular bus instead. The secretary made the change. The call ended, and Lawson put the phone down and settled into wait again. For the next several hours, Lawson remained inside the Holston home. He waited through the morning. He waited through the early afternoon. At some point during that time, Todd Holston was at his worksite in Kentucky, trying and failing to reach his wife by phone, growing more concerned with every unanswered call. But inside the house, there was only quiet, and Lawson, and the body of Stacey Holston, hidden under a mattress in her son's bedroom. At approximately 3:32 p.m., Devon's school bus came down the road and stopped. Devon Holston, 8 years old, climbed off the bus and walked home. He came through the door and found Lawson sitting in the living room. And here is the detail that sits in the center of this entire case like something immovable. Lawson sat down with that boy. He talked to him. Devon asked about his mother. He asked when his father was coming home. Lawson did not have answers to those questions. So instead, he told Devon that his PlayStation 3 was in his bedroom, behind the dresser. Devon went to his room to look for it. As the boy crouched behind his dresser, searching for something that was never there, Lawson shot him twice. Once in the arm, once in the torso. The second shot was fatal. Lawson covered the boy's body with clothing and left it where it fell. Then he waited again. At around 6:30 to 6:40 p.m., Todd Holston, now driving home from Kentucky and still unable to reach Stacey, called Tammy McGuire. He asked her to check on the house. Tammy drove over. She found the doors locked. She called Todd back. He told her to break in. She forced her way through the door. And as she moved through that house, the phone line to Todd still open, she found something that made her scream. Lawson was in the main bedroom when he heard Tammy force her way in. He positioned himself behind the bedroom door. When Tammy pushed it open, he stepped out and shot her. One round to the neck, fatally injuring her spinal cord. One round to the shoulder. He dragged her body to the laundry area, threw a blanket over her, and then went outside and used her keys to move her truck around to the back of the house, out of sight from the road. Todd had heard the scream. He had heard the silence that followed. He had called Donald McGuire and told him what happened. Donald left his home on foot and walked to the Holston residence. He tried the back door first. It was locked. He walked around to the front and forced his way through. Lawson shot him the moment he came through the door. One round to the shoulder. One round, fatal, to the chest. He dragged Donald's body to Devon's bedroom and left it there. 10 to 20 minutes later, Todd Holston's headlights came up the driveway. Todd came through the front door, and Lawson came at him with a knife, driving the blade into Todd's head, neck, and torso multiple times before Todd managed to overpower him, wrestle the knife away, and pin him to the couch. It was in that moment, with Lawson pinned beneath him, that Todd asked him why. And Lawson told him there had been people breaking in, that he thought Todd was one of them. And then, according to Todd's testimony, Lawson shook, like something shifted behind his eyes, like he was returning from somewhere else entirely. Todd forced him out of the house. Lawson got into Tammy's truck and drove away. And Todd bleeding from multiple stab wounds. Went to check on his youngest son. Found BH unharmed, and drove to Tammy's brother's house to call for help. The entire operation, from the moment Lawson climbed through that rear window at approximately 5 a.m. to the moment he drove away in Tammy's truck sometime around 7:30 p.m., had taken roughly 14 hours. 14 hours inside a family home, for people dead, one survivor, and a 2-year-old boy who, according to Lawson's own confession, had slept through at least the first 3 of those murders. The evidence assembled by BCI and the Montgomery County Coroner's Office locked every stage of that timeline into place. The propped window confirmed premeditated entry. The backpack confirmed preparation. The DNA confirmed what happened to Stacey's body. The cell-phone records confirmed the 9:23 a.m. call to the school. The autopsy findings confirmed the sequence and method of each killing. And Lawson's own confession confirmed the rest. On October 18, 2017, 1 week after the murders, the Lawrence County Grand Jury returned an indictment against Arron Lawson. It was not a simple document. It was an 11-count indictment, later expanded to 13 counts, that laid out in precise legal language the full scope of what Lawson had done inside that house. For counts of aggravated murder, each carrying multiple death penalty specifications, additional counts covering attempted murder for the attack on Todd Holston, aggravated burglary, rape, abuse of a corpse, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, theft of a motor vehicle, and failure to comply with a police officer's order. The state of Ohio was not leaving anything on the table. The death specifications attached to those for aggravated murder counts were extensive. For Stacey's murder, the state charged a course of conduct specification, meaning Lawson had purposefully killed 2 or more people. A felony murder specification predicated on aggravated burglary, and a felony murder specification predicated on rape. For Devin's murder, the state added further specifications, including the murder of a victim younger than 13, murder committed to escape detection or punishment, felony murder predicated on kidnapping, and murder to prevent testimony. For the murders of Tammy and Donald McGuire, the specifications included course of conduct, murder to escape detection, and felony murder predicated on aggravated burglary. Now, what happened next in the legal proceedings was something that Lawson's own attorneys did not see coming. Or rather, something they tried to prevent and could not. More than a year after his arrest, with jury selection already underway in February 2019, Lawson told his legal team that he did not want a trial. He did not want to put himself, his family, or the families of the victims through the process of a full jury trial. With all of the evidence and photographs that would be presented, he wanted to change his plea. He wanted to waive his right to a jury and instead have his case heard by a 3-judge panel. His attorneys advised him strongly against it. They told him, clearly and directly, that this was not the path they recommended. Lawson listened to that advice, and he ignored it. He had spent a night thinking it over. He told the court, watching his mother cry during a family visit, and then distancing himself from that emotion and deciding what he believed was the best decision for his own life. On February 12, 2019, he filed a written jury waiver. 9 days later, on February 21, 2019, he stood before a 3-judge panel, presided over by Lawrence County Common Pleas Judge Andy Ballard, alongside retired Cuyahoga County Judge Janet Burnside and retired Brown County Judge R. Alan Corbin, and he entered guilty pleas to all remaining counts and specifications in the indictment. The panel then heard the state's evidence of guilt over the following days, as required by Ohio law in capital cases. On February 25, 2019, the panel unanimously found Lawson guilty of all 4 counts of aggravated murder, with multiple death pacifications. The one exception was the rape count itself and its associated felony murder specification, which the panel did not find proven beyond a reasonable doubt in the strict legal sense of the charge, even though the underlying conduct was confirmed by forensic evidence and acknowledged in Lawson's confession. The mitigation hearing began the following day, February 26, 2019. This was Lawson's opportunity, through his attorneys and their witnesses, to present every factor that might argue against the imposition of the death penalty, and his legal team worked thoroughly. They presented testimony from his mother, Carolyn Taylor, from his half-sister, Stephanie Bentley, and from Dr. Bob Stinson, a forensic psychologist who had spent a total of 12 hours interviewing Lawson across 4 sessions and had reviewed years of medical, mental health, educational, and family records. What Dr. Stinson described to the panel was a life marked by extraordinary instability from its earliest days. Lawson had experienced at least 9 of the 11 recognized adverse childhood experiences, a clinical framework developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to measure childhood trauma and its relationship to negative life outcomes. The presence of 4 or 5 such experiences is considered enough to significantly increase the risk of negative outcomes. Lawson had at least 9. His mother, Carolyn Taylor, suffered from severe, documented mental illness, including bipolar disorder with psychotic features and schizoaffective disorder, conditions so debilitating that the Social Security Administration had determined she was permanently impaired and unable to engage in any gainful activity. Lawson's father had left before he was born, denied paternity until a DNA test proved otherwise, and was described by multiple family members as drunk every day. Lawson had grown up in a household defined by instability, multiple custody changes, allegations of physical abuse, a family history saturated with mental illness and substance dependency, and a pervasive atmosphere in which children reported harm and were not believed or protected. Dr. Stinson testified that Lawson had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and anxiety disorder at age 16, that he had been hospitalized twice in psychiatric facilities following violent or suicidal episodes, that since 2011 he had carried repeated diagnoses of depressive disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, that he exhibited classic symptoms of both conditions at the time of his interviews with Stinson, and that despite those hospitalizations and those diagnoses, Lawson had never received the kind of sustained, appropriate treatment that his conditions required. The panel also heard from Lawson himself. In an unsworn statement, he told the judges that he knew what he had done was wrong. He said he was truly sorry. He apologized to the victims, to their families, and to his own family. He told the panel that he could not sleep, that he cried constantly, that he had flashbacks, and he ended his statement with words that the panel and the Ohio Supreme Court would later note in their written opinion. "I don't expect sympathy. If it be death penalty, then I'll take it. I'm at peace with whatever you give me." The 3-judge panel deliberated for 4 hours. They came back unanimous. Lawson was sentenced to death on all 4 counts of aggravated murder. The panel found, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the aggravating circumstances for murders, including the deliberate killing of an 8-year-old child, carried out over 14 hours with extraordinary premeditation, outweighed the mitigating factors presented on his behalf. In addition to the 4 death sentences, Lawson received a total of 59 years and 6 months in prison for the remaining counts, covering the attempted murder of Todd Holston, the aggravated burglary, the kidnapping, the abuse of a corpse, the tampering with evidence, the vehicle theft, and the failure to comply with law enforcement. Because Ohio law mandates an automatic appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court in all death penalty cases, Lawson's case was reviewed by the court's full bench. In March 2021, his appellate attorneys argued 5 propositions of law, including that Lawson should never have been allowed to plead guilty without a formal competency evaluation, that his jury waiver was invalid, that his trial counsel had been ineffective, and that the sentencing panel had improperly weighed the evidence against him. They argued that a man with Lawson's documented history of bipolar disorder, PTSD, depression, psychiatric hospitalizations, and ongoing prescription medications, including Zoloft, should have been formally evaluated by a clinical expert before any court accepted his decision to plead guilty to capital charges. The Ohio Supreme Court, in a majority opinion decided October 7, 2021, overruled every single one of those propositions of law. The court conducted its own independent review of the aggravating circumstances and the mitigating factors and concluded, as the 3-judge panel had, that the aggravating circumstances outweighed the mitigating factors beyond a reasonable doubt as to each of the 4 murders. The court affirmed all for death sentences and found each one appropriate and proportionate to similar cases in Ohio legal history. However, the decision was not without significant dissent. Justice Brunner wrote a detailed and forceful dissenting opinion, arguing that the court's current framework for evaluating competency in capital cases was constitutionally insufficient. She argued that relying on the observations of judges and attorneys to determine whether a capital defendant is mentally competent to plead guilty, particularly when that defendant is taking prescription medications with known cognitive side effects, is not a medically sound or constitutionally rigorous standard. She argued that the issue of Lawson's competency had been raised multiple times by the trial court itself, and that under Ohio law, once the issue is raised, a formal hearing is mandatory. She would have reversed the convictions and remanded the case for a proper competency evaluation and hearing. Justice Donnelly, while concurring with the majority's decision to affirm the convictions, wrote separately to express his own reluctance about the death sentences. He noted that as of April 12, 2021, a new Ohio law had taken effect, one that prohibits the imposition of the death penalty on defendants who had a serious mental illness at the time of their offense, if that illness significantly impaired their capacity to exercise rational judgment. Bipolar disorder is explicitly listed as a qualifying serious mental illness under that law, and Justice Donnelly noted pointedly that because Lawson was sentenced before that law took effect, a door remained open for him to seek post-conviction relief under its provisions. Arron Lawson remains on death row at the Chillicothe Correctional Institute. His execution was originally scheduled for January 6, 2026. As of the time this case was researched, that execution had been stayed, as his legal team continues to argue that his documented serious mental illness should exempt him from the death penalty under the new Ohio statute. The case remains an active and unresolved point of legal contention in the Ohio courts. Todd Holston survived the stabbing that night. Physically, he walked out of that house carrying wounds that no surgery can fully address. He lost his wife. He lost his son. He lost his mother-in-law and his father-in-law, all in a single evening, inside the home where his family had lived. 2-year-old BH, who slept through most of what happened that night, will grow up without his mother and without his brother Devin. The broader impact of this case extended beyond the Holston and McGuire families. The case became a significant procedural reference point in Ohio's ongoing conversation about mental illness and the death penalty. In April 2021, a new Ohio law took effect, directly prohibiting the execution of defendants who had a serious mental illness, including bipolar disorder, at the time of their offense, if that illness significantly impaired their capacity for rational judgment. That law did not come from nowhere. Cases like Lawson's, where documented mental illness sat at the center of a capital proceeding without ever being formally unclinically evaluated, contributed to the legislative pressure that produced it. Whether that law ultimately affects Lawson's own sentence remains an open legal question, as his attorneys continue to pursue post-conviction relief under its provisions. Stacey Holston is remembered in the Pedro community as a steady, caring presence, a woman whose most defining daily act was a text message, something so small that most people would not even think to mention it. But the people who knew her mention it, because that is exactly who she was. Now, this case carries a warning worth saying plainly. Obsession does not always come from strangers. Sometimes it lives inside a familiar face, someone who has always been around, someone who feels safe because they are family. Please pay attention to the people closest to you, and please take seriously any behavior that feels wrong, even when you cannot fully explain why. I want to ask you something before you go. Given that Ohio now has a law protecting seriously mentally ill defendants from execution, do you think that law should apply retroactively to cases like Lawson's? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We post real crime case videos every week. Until next time, always remember to stay alert and stay safe.